Hello everybody, it is Kate, the West Coast Paper Crafter, and you are joining me for my Memorable Blooms Card Class at Home project number 3. Excuse me. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to make this very simple but pretty design using the Memorable Blooms stamps and also the dies that come in the bundle. All right, so we will get started. I'm just going to go through all the measurements. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're going to find the measurements in the video description. If you are catching this as a Facebook video, then you're going to get the measurements in the photo comment that I include with all the Facebook stuff. All right, let's get this aside and we'll go through our measurements. We're going to start out with our card base. This is Moody Mauve, and it's 4 1/4 by 11, and it's scored and folded at 5 1/2. Then we've got a Blackberry Bliss layer. This is 4 1/8 by 3 7/8. A Highland Heather layer that is 4 by 3 3/4. I've got another piece of Blackberry Bliss, and this is 1 3/8 by 4 1/8. This is a piece of Designer Series paper from the Perennial Lavender pack, and this is 1 1/4 by 4. And then we've got some die cuts. So I've used the dies from Memorable Blooms to cut these out. I've cut the hexagon out of the Perennial Lavender paper, and I've cut this intricate die cut out of Blackberry Bliss. So let me just show you the dies. These are the dies that come with the set. Now I used this one to cut out the Perennial Lavender, and then I stacked these or nested these together like so to cut out the Blackberry Bliss. So if you weren't exactly too sure how to get this all out in one piece, you do need to nest these two dies together to get this end result. All right, so those are all the pieces. Oh, one more. I've got a little piece of basic white that I've cut out with the Textured Notes die cut, and it is 2 1/4 by 3/4 of an inch, and I'm going to use that for the sentiment. All right, I'm going to get that out of the way for now, and we're going to start out by doing a little bit of trimming on our card base. So go ahead and grab your paper trimmer if you are crafting along. And what we're going to do is just cut 1 1/2 inches off the front of our card. All right, so here's our card front, and I'm going to just cut off 1 1/2 inches. So I'm lining that up in my paper trimmer. And there we go. And now your card base will look like that. That is all we need the paper trimmer for, so you can get that out of your way. And we'll start with doing a little bit of stamping on the Highland Heather cardstock. And I'm going to use the leaves and also the smaller floral image, and I'm going to stamp in a random pattern on the Highland Heather cardstock in the same shade of ink. So I'm just using Highland Heather ink. I'm going to create a little bit of a background on my cardstock with just random stamping. And I'll also be sure to stamp off as well. So it's not so important that you get the very middle of your Highland Heather cardstock, because we're going to cover that up with the die cut, but you definitely want to make sure that you're getting all the edges. And I'm just going to go in to any little corner that is a little bit bare and add just the corner edges of my stamp. All right, so I'm going to get these out of the way. I don't need them anymore. And then I'm just going to give my workstation a quick little wipe. Otherwise, I'm going to transfer that Highland Heather ink to other parts of my card, and I don't want that to happen. So this card is a really quick card to put together. You'll see, it comes together in a snap. So I'm just going to layer my Highland Heather piece onto my Blackberry Bliss layer. And then once I've got that glued down, then I'm going to go ahead and add some ribbon. So I have got, for this project, I'm using a what is that called? It's a Blackberry Bliss ribbon with some gold trim. I thought there was a name on it. It just says textured ribbon, but it is Blackberry Bliss. And last I checked, this was in the last chance section, so it was on sale. I'm not exactly too sure how long it's going to last for, but it was in stock on the day that I recorded this video. Now, some of you know I have pre-recorded videos because of spring break. So if you are watching this video, I've actually recorded it a week ahead of time. All right, so I'm just going to add a little bit of tear and tape to the back of my layer and fold over one edge of that Blackberry Bliss. And flip that around and make sure that I have it in the middle, or as close to the middle as I'm going to get. And then I'm going to add some more tear and tape to the other side of that cardstock and glue this down. I'm just going to lower my camera just a smidge. All right, now I'm going to fold this side over. And then when you turn it around, if your ribbon isn't quite straight, if you're using tear and tape, it's pretty forgiving. You can just pull up and readjust. It's not too hard to do. All right, so now this piece is going to get glued onto the front of the card flap. Now you do need to be mindful because it's only going to fit one way. So the shorter width is what goes on top, and then it's a little bit longer on the bottom. I think I'm doing that right. Let me just measure it. All right, it is the 3 3/4 width that's going to go across the top, or the top part of the card. I have to think about that. Words are coming hard for me today for this video. All right, so I'm just going to glue this flat down on the card front. Now these layers are pretty subtle, so you're just going to have a tiny little border in between the Moody Mauve, the Blackberry Bliss, and the Highland Heather. If you like if you like to see more of your color popping through, then just make your pieces a little bit smaller, each layer a little bit smaller than what I've cut. All right, so now our card is looking like this. We're going to go ahead and add our side panels. So I'm going to glue the designer series paper, the Perennial Lavender paper, onto the Blackberry Bliss layer. And then I'm just going to glue that down to the right edge of the card on the inside. All right, so now your card should look something like this. And then we're going to add the die cut. So we need to glue the Blackberry Bliss fancy die cut piece onto the Perennial Lavender hexagon. So if you've got a fine tip glue bottle, that's handy for this type of gluing because you just have a little bit of space to put glue on. So I find that these fine tip glue bottles work really well. And this is just a little fine tip refillable glue bottle that you can get off of Amazon. And I know Stampin' Up! Also has a fine tip glue bottle as well. I do like my little refillable bottle though. It's pretty handy and it's easy to unclog. If it gets gummed up, I just use a little sewing needle and I unclog it that way. But it actually doesn't get clogged up as much as my regular glue does, which is surprising. So I'm just going to add just a little bead of Tombow multi-purpose liquid glue all around the edges of this die cut. I think I've got enough. Oh, maybe one more little spot here. There, okay. And then I'm just going to line this up with the, oh no, I smudged it, with the hexagon. And then once I get everything down, I'm going to clean up my little glue mess the best I can. Glue happens. So if you got a fingernail, when you make little glue messes like I just did, you can easily pick it up with your nail and get it off your paper. And glue erasers are handy if you make a pretty big mess. But as you can see with the Perennial Lavender paper, that you can't even really see. You can see the shine when I tilt it of where I've smudged that glue. So somewhere in my stash, I will show you, I have got a handy little glue eraser. And my friend found this at the dollar store, but I'm sure you can order them off Amazon. And when you have glue messes, if you just have a little bit of patience and let that glue dry, once it's completely dry, you can just very gently use the edge of the glue eraser and it's going to rub that glue off without damaging your cardstock. So there's an option if you are like me and you're a messy crafter. All right, so now I'm going to add this to the front of the card and I'm going to pop it up with dimensionals. Just going to make sure which way I want my die cut to go. I'm going to add dimensionals on the top and bottom so the ribbon isn't in the way. I don't want to stick my die cut directly on the ribbon. I want to have it flat on the card front so it's all the same height, if that makes any sense. All right, I'm going to put this right in the middle. Just like so. All right, so now we're here. Okay, so a little bit of stamping for the sentiment, and I'm going to use the I Appreciate Your Thoughtfulness sentiment from the Memorable Bloom stamp set. I'm going to stamp in Blackberry Bliss, and my die cut, which is 2 1/4 by 3/4, is just big enough for this. So I'm going to want to get my head right over it because I don't have a lot of wiggle room. All right, there we go. I'm going to put that aside for 1 second because Blackberry Bliss is one of those dark colors that, in my opinion, just needs a hot minute to dry. Otherwise, it smudges really easy. So while that is drying, I'm just going to take a little bit more of the Blackberry Bliss gold trimmed ribbon, and I'm going to tie it in a bow and get it ready because I am going to glue this, I'm going to glue this to the side of the card, but that's going to be the last step I do because I'm going to use the Tombow glue to glue this bow on, and when I use Tombow for this ribbon and for my trinkets, it does need a little bit of time to set, so I like to weight it down. I usually will put a block or two on top, and then I'll let it sit for about 5 minutes, maybe 10, and just let that glue set. And then that ribbon, like you can see here, it's stuck on pretty good. I mean, you could tear it off, but you would have to actually intentionally pull that ribbon off. So I'm just going to use the Tombow. You can use glue dots as well if you prefer glue dots, but for adding trinkets and bows, I am a Tombow girl. I'm just finagling my bow so it looks the way I want it. I like to have my loops a little smaller and that knot in the middle nice and tight. So it just takes a little bit of maneuvering, and then I can kind of pull on the tails of that bow until I have them the right direction or the way I want them to go. And I'm just going to shorten this a little bit and trim it. All right, so now I'm going to add the sentiment right onto my die cut. And then I'm going to add a bow and a couple bee trinkets, and that is it. I've got my little bee trinkets here, and these I'm just going to add just a few. I'm going to put little glue dots down where I want to put my bees. I'll add 3. I'm going to put a glue dot where I'm going to put my bow too. All right, so if you have your take your pick tool, the putty end is pretty handy for picking up these little bee trinkets and placing them on your project. You know, I almost need 2 take your pick tools so I can pop these bees right off my putty end. All right, then I'm going to add my bow right on the side. And what I need to do is just get something heavy to weight everything down. So I'm going to start with 1 block, and I'm going to grab my other block, and I might even add, actually, let's do this. I'm going to add 1 more block to the bow because the bow is going to be the hardest part to set. The bees set pretty quick, but this Blackberry Bliss ribbon, it needs a little bit of weight and it needs a few minutes. But while that is drying, this is the end product. So I hope you enjoy this project. This is project number 3 in the Memorable Blooms card series. Now, if you like to add paper to the inside, you could add a layer of basic white. That would look really nice. And I would probably cut that layer to 4 1/8 by 3 7/8, so it would be the same size as your Blackberry Bliss layer. And you could just add that right to the inside of the card. So that's project number 3. Let's do a little recap. And this was project number 1, project number 2, And of course, tonight's project number 3. So tune back in next week and catch project number 4. And thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you've been enjoying this class. Bye for now.